Mrs. Green Apple, we are continuing our track-by-track listen through to the album 12 by checking out the song Hug, which has an official lyric video and everything, but you're probably saying, Howard, the next track in your track-by-track listen through was actually Shiroi Asa, the interlude. Well, I'm glad to tell you that I've actually lined that up as well. So yes, we're going to be listening to the interlude and then going straight into the single. Well, I'm going to call it a single. They made a lyric video for it. You know my thing, if you make a deliberate video for a song, in 2026, as far as I'm concerned, that makes it a single. So, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be checking them both out. I mean, this has been such an interesting listen through already. I've already talked about how this has been a lot of ups and downs. We've listened to so much Mrs. Green Apple on this channel, but listening to this first full-length album, it really, to me, both shows how quickly they got such a mature and excellent sound together with songwriting and performance and everything, but also at the same time, yeah, I can hear how they've progressed in this point. I can hear how they've improved and moved forward from where they perhaps once were, which is always the thing, you know, no band is perfect, nothing is perfect, everything can be improved upon. And so I think the truly great bands are the ones who take however good their start was and build upon it. And so yeah, this for me, is it my favourite album thus far? I'm thinking it might not be, but it's definitely got some of my favourite songs. I mean, Simple was a brilliant track. There's just been some great tracks on this. So, given that it's an album that's throwing a lot of surprises at me, I'm really interested to see what we get. So anyway, we've got the 33-second interlude first, Shiroi Asa, and then we'll go straight into Hug, and I'll talk about both of them afterwards. As always, let's enjoy this together. This is Shiroi Asa, and then Hug. Bright morning. I can hear bedspread. Oh, there's the curtains. We're getting those vibes again from the intro. And then let's go straight into it. Nice. I do think that intro helps. Very delicate. Yeah, really hear the acoustic, really hear the strings there. Very falsetto vocals. Very delicate. Loving the vocal layering. Yeah, it's just like, excuse the metaphor, it's like a blanket of sound that wraps around your ears. Well, I love how you can hear the hats building up in pressure on the drum. Simple. Lovely harmony. Again, the backing sounds. Little vocal effects in the background. A key change for a key change, nice. This is a very interesting song. It's both very different and very familiar at the same time. Everybody hug. Yeah. That's right. Okay, so this song is actually very interesting in its approach. I mean, the effect it has is undeniably very well executed. This feeling of just creating this. As a song, I'm going to use the metaphor. I've used it before, and I think it's very appropriate here. This kind of blanket of sounds that wraps around your ears. You genuinely feel like it's not overpowering, it's not oppressive, it's not so thick, and yet there's something happening both on the left and the right that's very different. You've got coverage from like the higher frequencies, bright sounds like picking of guitars, and the gentle sound of cymbals that you can hear really being tapped in a very very physical way. You can really feel the build up of them all the way through to the mid ranges. I mean, the vocals obviously start very high. You've got a lot of power in the mid range with different parts of guitars and piano sounds, and then you go down to obviously the bass and the drums. You know where all the sounds are, but the thing is that everything feels very full and thick and crisp in this song. But again, like I say, it's not crammed in. At the same time, there's a real delicacy to the sound. But the songwriting itself is actually quite interesting, because in one way it's I mean, I'll get this out the way first of all and say that everything about the way that the basic core of the song is structured, the melody is so standard Mrs. Greenapple that I've heard that melody in quite a few other Mrs. Greenapple songs. I need to go back through and check, but that is a melody. That cadence, he uses that in so many songs. And so in a way you could say, okay, is it just kind of like the most basic middle ground Mrs. Greenapple song? No, because it does something a bit different. Now, yeah, the melody, very standard, very much what he's done in a lot of other songs. But this song is structured in a rather interesting way, in that and it's going to sound like I'm about to give it another negative, but I'm not. Because what I'm going to say is that it's actually kind of repeats. It's a bit repetitive in a way, but this is clearly the intention, is that basically with a small change, it's kind of the same melody and chord pattern going round and round and round and round and round for most of the song, with exceptions to that key change at the end. But what happens is almost every couple of bars, there's some kind of important, significant shift to the balance of the song. You'll have things like those little backing vocals come in, and they're distorted, but they're harmonizing beautifully, so they sound a little bit on edge, like just not quite perfect, not quite angelic. They're a bit distorted, but they're harmonizing in a beautiful way. And then you'll get like something will just change with the guitars and everything moving around, and you get these interesting little shifts throughout. Even that build up that I mentioned with the cymbals and the drums, it feels like there's a real sense that details, variation, and sorry, I thought I heard something full. Variation and all this is being executed throughout the song as the kind of the primary thing. It's about, I mean, it's not that long a song, it's just over 3 minutes, but they're really trying to keep everything interesting by just having little things shift here and there. I mean, just listen to that for a start. Listen to how different the two guitar lines are. I mean, already it's a very crisp range of different melodies and counter melodies, which means it's very easy to move things around because every instrument's doing its own thing. So you just take one thing out and replace it with another, and immediately it very much fundamentally changes the balance of the song, but in an interesting way, again, without having to shift the chord pattern or anything, or like the melody or anything too central. I just kind of going into the bit where it's mostly on point. I mean, listen to that. Now the bass is doing all the walking. There's a vocal harmony. Piano's doing stuff. Guitars have changed. Now the bass is totally different. The harmonies have moved up. The guitars are playing different melodies. This is like this all the way throughout. Every time he repeats that central melody, which doesn't really change that much throughout the song, the entire backing seems to shift, like lots of things. So you get this feeling of a very steady song, which isn't really changing. It's mostly the same sort of chords, mostly the same sort of melody, and yet all of the details are shifting throughout. And I think that the result is a very interesting song. You know, he builds it up in the chorus, it get more high pressure, slightly more loud, intense sounds, but basically the song mostly sticks to the same idea throughout, and it's very interesting, very effective, and yeah, delivered very well. So I have to say, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a really interesting song. Have to be honest, if I was sort of like giving credit for what are my favourite Mrs. Green Apple songs, yeah, in all honesty, this is a song that for me would not be like a top tier one, because I don't think it's, you know, it's a very interesting demonstration. It shows an interesting side of the band, and I kind of like it almost more on a appreciation level. Like, I respect and appreciate it, and I just kind of like the details and nuances and what's been executed here. I do think he's got other songs that do this same thing a little bit better later in his career, in their career, I should say. You know, I do think they've managed to sort of execute this same idea better in later days, and I do think they have some songs that are a little bit more memorable and have built upon this. But I would still say that this is a sort of song I wouldn't skip it. I would always find it interesting. I find it almost more academically interesting the way he structured it than anything. But it definitely, the feeling's there. It's a nice, delicate song that you genuinely feel quite warmed by. It's a little musical hug. Yes, the name came out well. But yeah, it's a song that if I was to give my overall rankings of Mrs. Green Apple songs, it would probably wind up somewhere around the middle. I suspect that's my guess on first listen. But that's not a negative, because they've always set the bar quite high. It's just, for me, this was more interesting. I thought it was a really interesting insight into the mind of Omori as a writer. I mean, some people have been mentioning, obviously, there's a lot of documentaries and little videos showing him talking about his writing technique. And I have said at some point, I am, as someone who appreciates songwriting primarily, I'm interested to watch those videos at some point, maybe later on, once I've got more used to hearing the whole discography. And then once I've really got a feel for his music, it'd be interesting to see how he talks about his own music. But certainly for me, this felt almost like it was a bit of him talking about his music in musical form. It was like him doing a little demonstration that shows the way he looks at music. So I liked this. As always, get in the comments though. Tell me what you think. Until I hopefully see you very soon in my next one of these. For now, ciao, ciao.